are my friends. Come along with me, see how the story ends.
This episode is brought to you by North Spore. Ever wondered what secrets lie beneath the forest floor? What if I told you there's a hidden kingdom waiting to be explored right in your own home? North Spore is your getaway to this magical world. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned mycologist, North Spore has everything you need to cultivate culinary delights, medicinal powerhouses, and even a little mind-expanding magic. Unlock the power of fungi with their top-notch spawn, easy-to-use kits, and a treasure trove of knowledge. If you're ready to embark on your mushroom journey, visit northspore.com and discover a community of passionate growers, expert resources, and endless possibilities. It's time to tap into the ancient wisdom of fungi and transform your world. Be sure to use code PROFESSIONALHIPPIES for a very special discount to fuel your fungal exploration. North Spore, where wonder grows. Hey, all you hippies, welcome back to another episode of the Professional Hippies. Today, we're going to dress it up a little bit as far as maybe a little bit more towards the professional side. Nah, probably a little bit more towards the hippie side. Let's be honest. Today, we have an amazing guest. We're joined by Niki Wells. And this episode's coming a little bit by popular demand. I've had a few of our mamas in the circle reach out and just have questions around navigating life of motherhood, but also trying to find ways to be a better mom and modalities to support that. And that's why I reached out to Niki. Her content's amazing, and we'll get into a little bit of her journey. And I think what I want to really accomplish with this episode more than anything is just kind of peeling back the curtain on how vulnerable the journey can be and how important getting guidance is. Like, as a man, I think there's going to be a lot of things that I probably won't be able to relate to. And that's, at the end of the day, why Dylan and I are showing up here as curious souls, newly married men, soon to be on our journey of supporting our spouses and motherhood. And so just to give you a little background and color to Niki, she's a life coach and a psychedelic guide who supports moms in healing so that they can thrive. And she has an awesome pedigree, some of the things we'll be digging into. But what I love about what you sent over with your bio, Niki, I'm going a little off the record, if that's cool.
Sure.
Is the way you presented it of just helping moms discover like their highest truth. And at the end of the day, I think you're going to find, hey, there's a lot of transformation that occurs when you reach out and ask for help, and going through Niki's past and seeing the content she produces and the way she supports people. I think there's going to be some nuggets of wisdom, some laughs, maybe some tears. I don't know. I'm prepping for everything. No, I'm kidding. Some containers we can open, some containers we can keep closed, right? But Niki,
I'd be like, let's not open that one. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and see where this where we go today. Motherhood journey. It's quite a thing. And you guys are, if you get to enter into the parenthood train, I guess we'll call it. It's like the biggest journey in so many ways. So
yeah, I think just as a jumping off point, I mean, you've been coaching for quite a while now, at least, right? Like, even coaching and being coached. And so if before kind of hopping into kind of where you're at now, if you could give us a little bit of a frame of reference for the body of work you were doing before that's kind of like led up to what you're doing now and how you're supporting folks. Because what I love about this the most is, just a disclaimer is like, hey, there's a lot of mushrooms involved in this and holding space for other people. And mushrooms are just like anything else, like a catalyst, a tool in the tool belt. So it's not a panacea where you can just be like, here, you're a mom, take some mushrooms. Like, there's got to be other things you can support folks with. So I'm sure there's a lead up point.
And I'm really happy you said that, because I've been having a lot of conversations lately about how, and I feel really strongly that mushrooms, whatever you're working with, are like, there's all these tools that we can access. It's psychedelics, breath work, whatever, cold plunges, all these different things that people are doing, right, to kind of like tap into themselves. And I think in many ways, it's this product of how we've become so disconnected, which is like we can totally go there, and I love talking about that topic. But um, everything like there's all these tools that we have in this toolbox, and it's really about engaging. It's really about picking the thing that you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this," but actually following through with the thing. It's the tool is meant to, like, help you, crack something open within yourself, but you actually have to be willing to kind of, like, go into that space, within yourself to get any result. Like, why are you gonna sit in an ice bath? Like, what are you getting from this? You know what I mean? Like, we're not just doing the thing. There's actually we're doing the thing to create some kind of change. And sometimes I see people get really stuck in like, oh, I'm doing all the actions and my life still is like a mess. And especially with mamas. Um, and that's where, to go like to my background, I started coaching in 2016, and I very quickly became obsessed with how our mind works. When I heard that the subconscious mind is what controls 95 to 98% of our daily life experience and how we operate, I was it was a huge moment for me of whoa, so much of what we're doing and how we're showing up and what we're thinking about and then the subsequent actions that we're taking are happening on this level that we're not even aware of, right? And it was this moment of okay. So my life is being run by my what we call in coaching, our critter brain, this like part of us that's back there, our little monkey mind. And when you really zoom
Mhm.
out, you're like, yeah, my life is being kind of run by my monkey mind. So I found coaching and I quickly became very, very interested in that a part of us, our subconscious and our subconscious experience. And um I started studying with other coaches and learning all about what, this kind of category that we'll call mindset. And um, I studied positive psychology, all these different things of like, what's up? Like, how does the way that we think about ourselves and the stories that we're telling about ourselves, how do they determine the life that we're seeing happening in front of us? So I just got really excited about learning how the mind works. And so um I started coaching people on mindset. And this is back in like, 2016, 2017. Coaching was like those were like the glory days of health and life coaching. Everyone was like, what's this thing? And it was like there's more than just Tony Robbins as a coaching opportunity.
Those are the
Anyways,
OG years for
those
sure.
are the OG years. You know about them. So I to kind of like continue on my path. So I'm coaching other people with mindset and I'm just like, this is the power of your subconscious mind and the power of like, the whole thinking, um, that your thoughts create your reality. This idea, if you guys have heard about this before, and I just was like in that world. And my one of my clients at the time, she had a really popular cannabis blog called Wake and Bake. And do you guys know it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
No,
It's
but it
a
sounds great.
No, but it sounds great. Yeah.
it's a very like um like mom, like she like makes like cannabis shaped waffles and stuff, but also like makes amazing recipes to help people heal with cannabis. And she was just like awesome. And she became a client of mine. And at that time, she had gone through the same health coach training that I went through. And had developed this program to help people. She had all these people messaging her on her blog, like, how do I like cannabis has changed my life? How do I help other people? How do I help myself further? All this kind of stuff. And so she created a training program based on the protocol that she was working with her clients of um, helping people get healthier using cannabis. And I helped her, kind of like pushed her through that. Obviously, I was a mindset coach. So I'm like pushing her through like taking the leap to create this training program that she had all these people asking for. And And then she was like, can you teach mindset to my trainees? And so I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll teach a class or whatever. And then very quickly she was like, can you run this business with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I think that sounds good. Yeah, let's do it. And so I suddenly like went from, it was like mindset coaching to my thing to now I'm teaching people who are in this training program about the power of mindset. I'm also teaching them coaching. And it was like, it became an amazing thing. We trained over almost 500 students in the time that I was with the program. So spent a lot of time doing that before now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's just how serendipitous business can be when you start them.
Yeah.
So you had that go down, and then you became a mom, right? And so how did that influence kind of the next trajectory? Were you helping
Mhm.
moms before motherhood? Like, what did that whole process look like?
Yeah. So um I have to mention my detour, which brought me to motherhood. So it's worth mentioning. So I had from 2018 until December of 2021, January of 2018 till December 2021, I was working with the Cannabis Coaching Institute and training and doing all the things. And um, but in truth, cannabis is not my medicine. And I think it's wonderful. It's an amazing medicine and tool for many people. And I just didn't have that level of like deep spiritual connection with it, like my business partner and many of our students. And so in 2021 at the end of the year, we decided that I was gonna leave the organization. I was still gonna like do some teaching and stuff, but I was pretty much gonna leave my main role as the director of student success and all these things. So at that time, in the fall of 2021, I moved back to Mexico. I'm a dual citizen, and so I've lived a bunch of times in Mexico, and um I moved to the Puerto Vallarta area in Sayulita, which is like this little surf town on the Pacific coast of Mexico. And um, I was I was like, I'm just gonna like, I want to go back to Mexico. I want to be at the ocean. I'm gonna learn how to surf and just like. So suddenly, I leave this business and I I pretty much took like 2022 to become a surf bum, and it was amazing, 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 amazing. It's my old life. This is my detour into motherhood. And
It's
yeah,
a fun
that
detour.
it's a great detour. Highly recommend
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah,
highly
usually sounds
recommend
like
it.
usually that means like roadblocks and stuff. You're like, nah, just something I
Yeah.
created.
Yeah, I like surfed, for a couple hours every day. And
It's like a
but it was
poor
such an
time to
amazing.
fall out of love with cannabis too. That's like the perfect time you would think.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of an identity. It was a bit of a moment. I mean, I have to admit, like it was an identity kind of crisis moment also because I had been doing this for years and I had really my private coaching was not the primary thing that I was doing. I was really focused on the school. And so it was this big identity shift of, well, who am I now if I'm not, associated with CCI and teaching and training the students and all this. And it was kind of this moment of like, I had to step back out and thus I surfed all day and enjoyed the sun and did a whole lot of nothing, which was amazing. I think a break. Highly
Sounds pretty
recommend it
good.
for everyone. Um, and I was like, I'm not going to coach anymore. I started, like 2022 happened and then into 2023. And at that time I was working with some clients privately with, um, in Mexico with psilocybin. And so I was still doing this stuff, but wasn't like focused on work really at all. Um, a- and then uh, my daughter's surprise happened and um it just like rerouted. I was like, okay, my surf bum lifestyle I think is now that chapter is closed and now I'm on this like motherhood train, which was amazing. I always wanted to be a mama, but it was like this super unexpected, unplanned thing in my life. And it has required so much of me in all these like chapters of my life. It's like, oh, this identity. Like when I think about my identity crisis when I left the Cannabis Coaching Institute, it's like, that's nothing compared to the identity uh, death that happens when you go through pregnancy and into motherhood. I'm 6 months into being a mama, and it's like, it's a thing. And I have so much respect and reverence for this process of becoming a mother and the journey. And and the reason why I'm so passionate about like moms now, it's like this, I think I'm suddenly on this journey that I can relate to this very specific group of people who are going through something that is the most intense thing that you can possibly go through. It's the truly like the biggest, most intense journey of your life, pregnancy, postpartum. And I'm again not that far into it, but I'm like, I have all these tools and I know how to move through these identity shifts that are happening. I've gone through so many identity deaths myself. And I'm like, I just want to continue doing that work with people um and with mamas. So that's how I got here mostly.
Well, we're so glad you're here. Holy cow,
Yeah.
what a journey. it One of the things that you brought up or just in the the questions we sent ahead and topics that I love that you suggested is that you felt like mushrooms are a great companion for mamas working
Yeah.
through the journey.
Yeah.
Out of
Yeah, I think they
curiosity, like
are.
why do you think that is?
Yeah, because mushrooms are they're a gift from our great mother, right? Mushrooms are the foundation of our entire ecological system, right? The mycelial network covers our planet. And I really see them as this gift that the mother is giving us. And so for mothers to receive, because what is it to be a mother? To be a mother is to be a good mother, I should say, because there are women who are mothers and I wouldn't call them good mothers, but to be a to like hold the archetype of a mother, a true mother, is there's a level of selflessness and also selfishness because there's like a care for self and a deep care for all others, and this kind of finding this very delicate and intimate balance of like, how do I maintain myself while I lovingly care for not only my own children but the rest of all children, really. So for me, archetypally speaking, um mothers often end up getting challenged with the giving part and the not holding themselves and caring for themselves at the same time. And so I think that mushrooms, because they are this beautiful gift from our great mother, it's like this it's the receiving that we get to get. It's the care that we get to get. It's the mothering that we, the mamas, get to get. Um it's like being held in the embrace of it all, of the great mother as a mama. And so when I'm held in that embrace and I receive what I need to receive, I can do my job, which is like the most important job
That's an
on
interesting
the
way of looking at that, of like you being a mother, of course, mother providing what we need to better understand things. And it's almost like it's nurturing you, providing
yeah,
you like, hey, you are helping create what I have created
yes,
for you to continue
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Interesting.
And interestingly, also, in Mexico, we call mushrooms are called Niños Santos, like in the Mazatec people, they call them Niños Santos, which is sainted children. And so there's also this interesting connection of like mushrooms being this gift, right, that we receive from our great mother, just like we receive, like, there's this crazy parallel, right, when you really kind of zoom out and look at it from this perspective of, the gift of me becoming a mama and having this child who I get to be in relationship with and learn from and be with, and then this gift of the Niños Santos coming from the great mother and that relationship. So, I really believe like everything is inside out, right? And so we get to see uh, we get to use the mushrooms as a tool to understand, like to receive that nourishment and that nurturing that we need, and to understand ourselves in, like you shared at the beginning, in our highest truth, right? Like, who are we really, and what do we most care about? um there's this the outcome that, do you guys know what the outcome is of children thriving later in life? Like, what's the one thing that they need most in order to thrive later in life? Do you know what that is?
Food.
I'm gonna say love.
Yeah.
Ooh, love
I
is a good
mean,
one.
we need both of those things, right? But the factor that contributes most to children thriving later in life is the quality of their mother's happiness.
Mm.
Sorry for you
Ooh.
future dads, like the happiness of the father isn't that relevant to the child's them thriving later in life, nor is the marital status or the happiness of the relationship. The most important factor is the quality of a mother's happiness. It's not just that she's like a little happy. It's like the depth of, like, is it real happiness? Does it come from inside? And that's why I say everything is inside out. And mushrooms in this case, like, they give us this opportunity as mamas to like clear out the cobwebs and the stuff that's distracting us from who am I really? What do I need to thrive as a woman, as a mama, as a human? What does my happiness, like, what's standing in the way of deep, like, I'm happy in my bones, you know? And I think
Mm.
mushrooms can help us with that. And if more mamas connect to that and they're like, I'm happy in my bones and I feel it, right? What happens? Our kids actually, like, there's even studies on children or teenagers whose mamas are deeply happy. They have better mental health outcomes as teenagers. And so you just get this like compound effect of, if you as a mama are deeply in your bones happy, and I should say, like, as a caveat, we're not meant to be happy 24/7, right? But there's a tone to our life of, I view myself and I feel this about my life. It creates an amazing ripple effect, the butterfly effect
Mhm.
of outcomes for our world. I think there's that potentiality, at least if more mamas get their hands on the
Oh,
thing
for
that they
sure.
need. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing about mushrooms is that, well, two things. I had a funny thing pop up earlier when you were saying like that warm embrace, coming from the earth.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are one of those medicines that almost force me down to the earth to hug it from not flying away. So it's
You're like,
like you're giving Pachamama a big hug, and you're like, whether it's in a patch of poison ivy or not, you're gonna find some ground. And
has that happened? I hope not. Oh my God.
Oh,
it has,
that's
unfortunately.
Oh God.
yeah.
But no, we learned a good thing that day. I'm not allergic to poison ivy. So the other thing is that it forces moms and other human beings alike to look within. Like, you can't hide, essentially. And moms,
Yeah.
in my opinion, do an amazing job of just giving, and not thinking like, what do I need to give more? Because it's almost impossible to give something you don't have. And there you are being confronted, and you have the thought loops, you have the awarenesses, but the only time you can run and hide is with massive resistance. And you can see really easily on someone if they're just having a rough go of it and not allowing what's in the subconscious to
Yeah,
present itself.
absolutely. And this is where I think, our bigger sort of a lot of the cultural narratives that we have and that we're all of this information that we're receiving, right? It kind of it clouds us and it disconnects us from um like we've made our fear, I think we've made our fear this bad thing, right? This like I don't want to look at what's there. We've all gotten really good at pushing everything. I'm going to dump this in the closet under the stairs, right? And I'm going to slam the door shut. I'm just going to pretend it's not there, right? But, you know, it's still there. And it's just this closet that's just filling up with all this stuff. I was talking to this woman the other day and she's like, "Oh, I would never do that. I am way too afraid. I don't want to." And I was like, she's like, "I have a lot of trauma and I don't want to know what's there." And it's just an interesting response that people have of like, to me, you're essentially you're saying I'm okay with having this weight that I'm going to carry around for the rest of my life. I'd rather just carry this heavy weight around with me than deal with it. I see the closet every day. It's bursting at the seams, but I don't want to open the door. I don't want to shine a light in there. And I just think it's so
It's like it's like a therapist where they're like, when the person's like, "Oh, I don't want to see it," but the therapist is like, "I want to see it. Let's get that out. Let's bring that out. Let's talk about it."
that's me. I'm like, let me poke you a little bit more. And
Let's
I'm
see
like, your
that
closet's
darkness.
there. I can see it right now. Here's the flashlight.
Way to bring like dark things up, but say it like so like with like medically and nice. Like, this is going to help you.
Nikki's the love police. She's like,
Yeah.
open up. She's got the big light.
That's totally
Come out
me.
of that
That's 100%.
closet.
What you got in there? Actually, I got to tell you guys this funny story that's making me think of when I was in high school. My parents were out of town and we had a party, obviously. And
Obviously.
there was underage drinking happening, obviously. We had like everything. We had Jello shots. We went all out. And I'm going to go as far as to tell you guys the theme of the party, which was pimps and hoes. So we are in, we, anyway, this is not, this is going to also set the stage for who I am as a person. It's not really, but God, please don't take this seriously. Anyway,
Let it out.
Pimps, yeah, we're gonna need you to let that one out.
Okay,
Come on.
so this is in my closet. I don't want everybody to know about it. No, I'm just kidding. We had this party and it was amazing. Everyone like went full out, dressed up. I think a lot of my guy friends like rented costumes. It was a good time until it wasn't. With of course the cops came, and my best friend, she hid out in this like little tiny my in my parents' house. They have this little closet door thing that's about this big. It's just big enough to slide your body in, and it's behind these. It's like a cabinet thing, right? It's basically a cabinet, and she hid out in this cabinet for the duration of the cops like going around the house and looking, and they didn't really think to look because it's quite a small door. And I just been thinking, like the flashlight looking into this little tiny mini closet, my friend in there in like a costume, on theme costume. It just was God, the best. So anyway, looking in little closets with a flashlight. Yes, that's my job in life.
That's probably
Anyway,
like the
side
most
note.
appropriate way to like visualize that too. Cause we're like, hey, a problem's here. Let's just make the real issue as tiny as possible and inconspicuous. But if you
Yeah.
opened it up, it'd look really fucking awkward and you'd have to deal with
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
It's like when you're like, it sounds like a cartoon. Like, all right, let's open it up. It's like, shut that. Or, we'll come back to that
What's
one.
behind door number 3?
We'll come back to that.
Yeah,
Your
Dr.
high school
Phil, we'll be
memories.
right back.
We'll be right back.
Be right back.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, poking holes in for moms, I think we get really good at, even before, this is the real thing, right? Is like before becoming a mama, we develop all these ways of being and all these stories about ourselves, and then we enter into the mama journey and all of that stuff's there, right? Our closet's there. And now I'm just like, it all the ways that I still think about myself that I haven't wanted to deal with are happening. Remember, I said that 95 to 98% subconscious operation, right? So all these stories are like running the show in the background anyway. And then you have this whole other experience happening, which you can have empathy for mamas and be like, this is that seems like a hard job, but like you don't, it unless you're another mama, you just can't really relate to it. And I've had so many conversations with mamas. They're like, yeah, until you go through it, you can be like, I imagine that that's difficult. And in pregnancy, you're like, I think it's going to be, you have no idea, right? You have no idea. And so I think we go through so much as mamas. We go through this, we've got all of our old shit, and then we become mamas, and that old stuff is all still there. And then there's this whole other new can of worms of like, well, who am I now as I relate to these beings that I'm now responsible for, right? And I want to do a good job, and but I also feel like I'm not myself anymore, and who am I, right? And so I think all of this stuff just compounds for us, and it can get really, it can get really intense and out of hand for people. And that's where whatever tool you want to use, whether it's mushrooms or otherwise, but I think connecting with a tool that's going to help you to you got to get to the truth of the matter. You got to be willing to clear out all the junk in your life and the stories that you've been telling yourself, and get to the heart of who you really are and what's really important to you. And if you've been telling yourself stories that aren't helping you now in your mama journey, you got to figure out how to change those stories because they get in the way.
You talked about earlier identity death,
Yeah.
right? Which we've all heard ego death, and that's kind of, it sounds like what you were just talking about right there. Identity death. You have everything, and you have to make these decisions on what direction to go. Do you see similarities? Going from where you're at now to motherhood, and then taking your first big trip and having your ego death and having that experience. Do you see similarities in that like only maybe a new mother could experience, and not, no one else could really experience, to have those correlations?
Absolutely. I think motherhood is the biggest, most intense psychedelic journey you can go on. It's like this never ending one. When you're like in a long journey that's going on for a long time, and you're like, okay, I'm through it. And then you're like, and I'm back down, like,
Cheerio, sucker.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's that it can be in the span of 5 minutes where you're like, I know what I'm doing. I'm happy. I've got this. We've got this. And then like you're on the floor again, and it's intense, and it's jarring, and it's exhausting at times, right? We've all been on journeys where you're like, I want this to end. I'm done with this. I'm done with this experience, right?
Like,
And
you're ready to exit the theme park. You're like, I have gotten my ticket value, where's the exit?
And
And
they're
the
like,
theme
there's a
park's
crash
like
at the
from the top.
entrance. Yeah, there's a crash at the entrance. We're not letting anybody out yet. Just
You're like, go
unfortunately,
back
we're gonna have
around. You're
to
like, take another
Yeah.
go
lap. And
back
you're like,
around. Give it
I
another
really.
like 10 hours. You'll be fine.
But that, I think it is so much of that. And until you have in the parallel of journeying, right? Like until you've done it and you have the experience and you're like, okay, I know this is going to end. I know I'm going to get through it. Y- Until you have that one journey where you go through it and you're like, this is horrible. I want this to end. And then it finally ends. And the next day you're like, okay, I got through it. Right. Like you can't possibly, it's the same thing with motherhood. Like you can't know how it's going to be in pregnancy. You like, you're preparing yourself and you're reading these books and you're talking to your friends and whatever. And pregnancy itself is a really big death of identity. You're growing another human in you. It's the most foreign thing, the most foreign and the most like certain at the same time. It's everything about pregnancy and mamahood is you're like, I know exactly that this is exactly right. And I also have no idea at all.
Yeah, it's interesting that those things are just like by nature put into you, right? Like as a woman, like you have as a woman, these things are put into you, so you know how to take care of this child that you grew inside you by DNA. Evolution's handed this down to you, but then you're like, why do I know these? How do I already know that, but I don't? I can only imagine. Wow. How have you found? I've heard postpartum is a pretty difficult thing, right after having a child. I'm wondering how you've utilized mushrooms to help with that, maybe.
Yeah. So mushrooms postpartum, I think it's important to put this in here that there's no like scientific data research on working with I'm just going to speak specifically to psilocybin when you're breastfeeding, it just like postpartum pregnancy, breastfeeding in particular, but postpartum in general, we don't have any data on it yet. And so I think it's important just to say that anytime you hear about people working with these medicines, it's anecdotal. I mean, it's just people's like personal experience. And so I do feel like it's important to say that so that people listening are like, connected. But for me, I feel like they are more than anything, they're helping me to feel like an opening to connect in with myself and who am I really now, right? Like we go through this identity death during pregnancy, and then you have your first couple months postpartum, which is just like insane. And you don't feel like yourself. You grew a human inside of you. Your entire body rearranged itself in every possible way. Postpartum, your body is still rearranging itself. You have this other being who is completely regulated to you, right? And so it's just this like symbiotic relationship. And so for me, mushrooms are a tool postpartum to help me open back up to myself. Who am I really now? Who do I want to be now? What are the things, what are the stories that I want to begin creating for myself and telling myself and the ways in which I want to interact with my life now? Because the thing in our culture, we talk a lot about bouncing back postpartum. Where are you bouncing back to? There's no going back there, and I think that's just like we need to shift the conversation around that, because again, your entire body, you have DNA now in you that's not yours, right? So like you're not the same. There's no going back. And I think that's really harming a lot of women because they're like, I want to go back, and we can't. This is where I think a tool like psilocybin can come in, because it helps us open up to and understand that old version of us, like, she's back there. She's the maiden, she's back there, and now you're the mother, and yeah, you don't quite know yet what that's all about, but psilocybin, cacao, like, these are all tools that can help us to, open so that we can figure out and discover and uncover, who we are now and where we wanna go now. So that's how I am connecting with them in my postpartum period, um and again, like, it's going to look different for everybody, and everybody has to kind of figure out what's right for them, um and how they want to utilize the tools that they have available.
One thing I'm curious about is, yeah, I've kind of seen this theme with moms in particular. Some fathers where after the child enters the universe and is a thing, they were experienced psychonauts, trippers, etc. But now that they feel this guilt or shame for wanting to even experience an altered state of consciousness. Because what if their kid needs them right then? Right. Like, even like forecasting in the future, they're like, oh, I know like my parents or someone I trust could take care of my kid for a night. So I go
Mm,
have this experience. But I've seen this with my sister in particular.
mm.
And she has, mentioned it a couple times, but in the sense of wanting to explore it. But at the end of the day, it just seems like there's some kind of attachment of like not being able to let go. And I'm curious if you've seen that or like can kind of speak to what I'm itching
Yeah.
out there.
I mean, I really feel that personally, the personal connection of like, I know that these tools really help me, and my job and my responsibility is to my child, and there's a little bit of a mind game that I think we have to play with ourselves, because yes, your child needs you, but also, who do they need you to be? They need you to be your happiest, fullest version, right? And so I think we have to zoom out a little bit as parents, if in feeling that way, and it's like, okay, in the grand scheme of my child's experience, if I know that working with psychedelics is helpful for me, it helps me to reconnect, it helps me to, understand these all that we've talked about today. Is me taking 24 hours to go and to do that for myself, is that going to, in the grand scheme, help my relationship with my child, help my child thrive? Yes. And the letting go piece is, I think there's also, for me, like this, almost this like, mm, because I don't know who be, because my identity has changed so much and is continuing to change, and I'm 6 months postpartum and I'm still very much figuring out all the things of motherhood. It's like there's a little bit of like that first trip fear, of like, oh my god, like
Mm.
what, you know, who I don't really I'm still figuring out who I am now. So when you're in a place in your life where like I'm very clear on who I am and I'm good, and I'm doing this work, it's a different place than parenthood throws something new at you every day, and there's like you're living in the unknown a lot of the time. And so I think some of that fear does come up of like what's gonna come up for me in the journey. So I think it's normal, and I think we need to like take the bigger picture and be in that same light, like be willing to kind of jump off the cliff of,
Mm.
I know this thing helps me to connect, and in the grand scheme of my whole thing, it's going to help. But I also think it's normal to feel that sense of sort of apprehension or guilt. We could go into like so many things about that, like parent guilt and all of that, but that's what I would say.
Yeah. It's probably almost fair too to not push that too much, right? Like pushing someone to partake if they're feeling like really guilt ridden. I mean, I don't know. Like, what do you think? Like, because that's one of those, like, you see that dichotomy of someone's like, hey, I feel really called, but like one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
I personally have learned the lesson of like, Dylan and I have seen it in our friend groups. We invite somebody to an event, and all of a sudden you're having to handle a meltdown because they're like, they gave all the signals of, I really want to do it, but I'm not ready. And you're like, oh, you'll be fine, because there's a little bit of projection.
Sure.
But I'm not a mom, so I don't know, because you're also speaking to something where it's like, hey, that space can be really healthy. And if you have someone that can hold space really well and help you move through that, on the other side of that is some really amazing transformation.
So I just had a client journey last week, and she's a mama. She has 3 kids, and she's feeling like, really, she had a lot of her own past kind of stuff that she wanted to work through. But as we got into our preparation conversation, she was like, sharing with me how she has a young son, and she was feeling like her she was feeling very disconnected from her son, and like how she was relating to him. And she realized through our preparation conversations that was kind of being mirrored because of the trouble she was having with her partner. And so she had this journey. She ended up, she approached me and was, very ready. And so I think that's a big part of it, is like when you get to a place of like, you have to be ready. And I don't like to tell people like, you should definitely do this. It's like, you need to be there, you need to be ready, you need to want to do it, especially for mamas, because it requires a lot of you to get there and to do the whole thing. But um she had this incredible journey. I mean, it was hard for her. She had a lot of fear that she had to face, but she faced it. And when she got through the fear and was able, and she had a very like kind of visceral experience of releasing this pain and this fear from her body. But on the other side of that, she then went into this beautiful sort of connection with her son and her journey, and really like opened up her heart to how she was connecting to her child. So it's a lot for a mama to say, I'm not connecting to my kid the way I want to be. It's something's in the way. And it happened to be like how she was relating to her partner. And she got to, release that in the journey. And so I think there's so much potential as mamas for us when there are those kinds of like, did she feel guilty about, she was like, I feel horrible that I am having this issue connecting with my child. She felt really bad about it. But I think she also had we talked a lot in our preparation about the courage to face the pain and having the courage to face the fear because of what's potentially going to come on the other side. And so I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it with my clients, and there's so much that we can do with this work. But the person has to be ready. And for mamas especially, it's like it, it, it's an effort. It's an effort to, I leave my daughter to go to the gym, and I'm like, oh God, I miss her. Like how she, and I want to know how she is. And so I think that's very real for a lot of mamas. And that can be in contrast to like, I love my kids so much, and like I'm struggling with myself. And we're again, that delicate balance of, can I take some time to choose myself so that I can be a better mama, more present, more alive, more full, more happy? Um, and that's not something that I'm here to convince any mama of. I think it's really, I want to be able to have conversations and to talk about the healing power that mushrooms, the potentiality of them. And I love them so much, and they're dear teachers and friends for me. And that's it. And when you're ready, you'll be ready. I think that's, we can't, and it's the same with coaching, right? It's like, I've had clients who are like, "Oh, I want to do it," but they show up to the coaching and they're just not invested, and they don't get anything out of it, right? And it's like circling back to the beginning of the conversation today. You could, why are you doing an ice bath? Why are you sitting in ice water every day, right? Like, what is this? if you're really ready for change in your life, because ultimately psilocybin is a transformational tool. So you have to be aware of the ways in which things aren't working for you in your life, and you have to be ready and willing to put in the work to change, right? Psilocybin, like, if you're not willing to sit in that discomfort of that pain and that fear that's coming up in the journey, and you run away, you're just going to cry and run away the whole time, and you're not going to get anything out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you are willing to, if you're at a place in your life where you're like, okay, if you're a mama and you're in your motherhood journey and like things are just not flowing for you and they're not working and you're not happy, it's your right to be happy in your experience as a mama and your experience with your children. And but it requires work because we've got all this stuff in the closet that we have to deal with. So
A lot of little girls in closets all over the place, you know?
it's true. It's true.
The only thing I can think of is so stupid. The South Park episode where he's making fun of the Mormons and they're in the closet. I'm sorry.
I haven't seen that so
There's so much South Park to digest anyhow. I don't blame you.
Oh, Tom
Yeah.
Cruise is in the closet.
I mean, since we're both sharing probably inappropriate references to that beautiful download, I pictured Lieutenant Dan when he's ready to go into the storm from Forrest Gump. And he's like,
Yeah.
bring it on. You know, that's the way I see some of the moms like having to navigate this, because it's like there's so much that gets put on the shoulders of a mom.
Yeah.
And when I did the Landmark Forum, I had some interesting things come up, and I remember calling my mom, you know, I'm like sobbing. I wrote her this letter and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, everything's beautiful. Everything's great." But just loving on her, how hard it was for her to receive that
Mm.
love. You know, it was met the whole time. I was like, "Let me just read you this letter, gratitude stuff." The whole time it was basically like, "Stop. I don't need this. Everything's okay. I love you. Just want to make sure you're okay." Like, moms have such a selfless duty and job. And
Yeah.
so what I love about the work you're doing is because you're literally opening a container where you're like, hey, like, you have to be ready and you got to want this. But if you trust the journey, it's going to magnify at the end of the day what you feel like your mission is, and showing up for your kids, showing up for yourself.
Showing up for your life. I
Hmm.
I really think that, when mamas who can create this connection with themselves, who can learn to receive from great mother Pachamama, who can learn to receive and to also be held in that embrace, who are willing to who can find the courage to face, you know, their fears, their pain. The the life that happens for those mamas on the other side, and the potential life and the impact that they're going to have on their kids, and the potential of leading in ways that, like, from a mother, like leading from the lens of the mother, right? I'm not talking about leading, we're not men, so that's a different dynamic, but leading from the lens of a healthy, happy, thriving mama. Like, there's so much. I want to see more of that. I want to see that, because that's what our world needs. Our world needs mothers who can receive and who can be nourished and restored so that they can continue to give in the way that we do so selflessly.
The world needs mamas, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we love the work you're doing. And so
Thank
as
you,
we're kind of
guys.
wrapping things up here, we have one question that we like to ask all of our guests. And so that question is actually, if folks asked you one question, you wish they asked you more, what would that question be?
Oh, that's a great question. If folks asked me one question more, I think the most important question that we can ask ourselves is, who am I really? Who am I really? Who am I really being? And it's a conversation that I love to have with people. And so if more people ask me, Niki, what does that mean when you say, who am I really? Who am I being? And I could open up some conversations around that topic and that theme, I would love that, because I think it's such an important entry point for our inquiry and to unearth who is there underneath all of the story and the conditioning that we are living by. So that would be my question.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
juicy.
Love it.
Yeah, that's like asking, how are you really, when someone says
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
I definitely thought you were going to say, what's in that closet? Cut it out.
Oh my gosh, that's my second question. That actually is yes.
I see you peeping out of there. I got my flashlight.
Who
Yeah.
are
See
you
you
really
there.
in that closet? I should bring like a cool flashlight on my videos and stuff. I'm like, this is my flashlight. We're unearthing what's in your
Are you a
closet.
panel closet? Are you a
Maybe
sliding?
that should be my podcast.
What's in your closet?
What's in your closet?
They show
don't know
up like
what-
thinking it's
what-
clothes, and they're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!"
I wasn't ready for that.
And Niki,
Oh
you
my
mentioned that
God.
you're going to be like relaunching. You're in the midst of relaunching. So, like, if folks were curious about working with you, any of your offerings, like, what's the best place for them to engage with you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram at Niki, Niki Wells __. That's the best place for now. And I'm getting ready to launch a free community for mamas. I think we need to gather and be together. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know when that community opens up. But I'm super excited about that. I think it's going to be a really cool space. So follow me on the gram and then keep your eyes peeled.
Beautiful. Well, we'll link all that in the show notes. And hey, mamas, daddies, uncles, nephews, all the good stuff. If you think somebody would benefit from this episode, feel free to send it on their way and connect with Niki. Other than that, guys, hey, we love you. Thank you so much for tuning in this episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.